So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first session of Module 1 of our African Union Smart Safety Surveillance, or AU3S, Capacity Strengthening Programme. This programme has been organised by AUDA NEPAD alongside the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the MHRA as partners in the AU3S programme. My name is Mick Foy. I'm Head of Pharmacovigilance Strategy at the MHRA, and it's a pleasure to open this first session in a series of training that will take place over the next 2 to 3 months. So you're very welcome. We have planned to have around 300 or so participants today. I think we are just over 100 at the minute, but we expect others to be joining as we go through. We have colleagues from Ghana, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and South Africa today, as well as other partners involved in the AU3S programme. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you will see on the screen here some of the functions. We have a Q&A button. This is where you can ask questions, and we will pick them up at the Q&A session at the end. You can use the chat function to let us know if you have any technical issues, and you will note that you are muted, and that will remain so throughout. So if you have any questions, please, questions about content that you want the speakers, myself or Mittal, to pick up at the end, use the Q&A function. If you have a technical issue, please use the chat function, and our technical colleagues will address those. Hopefully you'll be able to get on with the technology. As I said, we have a number of attendees from the 4 countries, as well as partner organisations, many of you from regulatory agencies, but also immunization programs, academia, and other healthcare settings. And you're all very, very welcome in this first session. I wanted to explain a little bit about the MHRA. Some of you may not be familiar with us and why we're involved in this programme. So the MHRA is the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency of the UK, with the UK Medicines and Medical Devices Regulator. And our role is to regulate healthcare products to ensure that they work and are acceptably safe. We focus on our core activities of product licensing, inspections and enforcement, and pharmacovigilance. We're an executive agency of the UK government. We report to the Department of Health and Social Care. We have around 1,200 staff based mainly in London, but we also have the National Institute of Biological Standards and Control, which many of you may not have heard of, but this is the part of the organisation that establishes biological standards and, importantly for now, does the batch testing on vaccines. So colleagues at our NIBSC department are hugely busy at the minute looking at batch releases for the COVID vaccines, which you will be very familiar with from the news. Our vision is that we protect and improve the health of millions of people through the effective regulation of medicines and medical devices, underpinned by science and research. And when we say millions of people, obviously as the UK regulator, our primary focus is on our citizens, but Mittal will explain through the course of this webinar that medicines and vaccine and devices regulation is truly a global system, and where one regulator has information around the safety of a medicine, for example, that gets filtered through to other countries, and we share information and act upon that information, whether it be generated in the UK, that could be for the benefit of global citizens as well. So we truly operate in a global pharmacovigilance and medicines regulation system. We joined the 3S Smart Safety Surveillance program 4 years ago now. We were invited by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to get involved in 3S, and we really are pleased to be part of this program. We truly believe that this program will enable the introduction of innovative treatments and vaccines to tackle major public health challenges, primarily those that are seen in low and middle income countries. For the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working on programs globally looking at malaria, at tuberculosis, and at rotavirus. We believe that through this program, we can help introduce sustainable pharmacovigilance systems that offer that can be integrated locally for the benefit of local healthcare to understand benefit risk decisions that are taken by a medicines regulator. And by doing this, that increases public confidence in medicines and vaccine safety. Never more important than as now, where we see the introduction of COVID-19 vaccines. Having strong regulatory systems, strong pharmacovigilance systems that can build public confidence where there is nervousness globally around the introduction of these new treatments. So these public health interventions can be very much supported by strong pharmacovigilance systems, and this 3S program seeks to enable that. We were invited by the Gates Foundation because we at the MHRA have a strong track record in capacity strengthening. We have been a founder member of the World Health Organization's International Drug Monitoring Program. We've led a number of similar projects in the European setting. Scope was very much focused on capacity building. It stands for strengthening collaborations to operate pharmacovigilance in Europe. And this primarily focused on identifying best practice in pharmacovigilance and upskilling European member states to carry out that best practice. The Web Radar program was another European initiative that looked at mobile technologies to support pharmacovigilance. And many of you might be familiar with the Med Safety app, which came out of that program and is now available in a number of countries globally. We're also currently leading the ICMRA. This is the International Collaboration of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, a global network of medicines regulators, and they have a work stream on pharmacovigilance, which we're leading. So through these kinds of programs, including the 3S program, we've been carrying out training and capacity building, as you can see here, around the globe over the past few years, and working with the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. We are using this now as an opportunity to further develop pharmacovigilance in this region. Also, we bring some technical expertise that we're keen to share with colleagues and hope to instill in other countries, because as I said earlier, pharmacovigilance is a global system. If other countries have robust adverse drug reaction monitoring systems, we can all benefit from the issues that they identify. So we've been building adverse drug reaction systems for many years. We pioneered methodologies in signal management, signal detection, and the use of databases to better organize and understand what ADR data is telling us. And again, Mittal will explain more about this in the course of the morning. We're advocates for inclusive PV. We introduce patient reporting. We're very keen to get the voice of all actors in the healthcare setting, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, and patients, as well as experts, both in our country and beyond. Risk management planning, you'll hear more about if you attend future sessions, and how we've shifted from reactive to proactive pharmacovigilance. Obviously, the benefit risk assessment of the data that's been submitted to regulatory agencies is a key aspect of the regulatory system. And again, throughout this program, we'll be hearing more about benefit risk assessment activities. All of this needs to be underpinned by strong regulation, but strong regulation that's informed by independent scientific advice. And our strong regulatory regime enables us to take regulatory action, make robust decisions. And that's something also that we've been sharing through the work of the 3S program over the years. This is underpinned by guidelines for all stakeholders. There are a series of guidelines that we've developed and helped other settings develop for all stakeholders: the industry, the regulators, the public, and healthcare professionals all have a role to play in the pharmacovigilance system. One of the most important aspects of the work that we've been doing through the 3S program is around establishing good teamwork and collaboration. And we take the approach that MHRA's role in this program is to help build capacity, not through lecturing, and I say this because this is a lecture, but really hands-on teamwork to really get people from the ground up working together proactively, building strong systems. And we're really pleased to have built some very strong collaborations over the past few years, and very much look forward to continuing in that vein with the work in the African Union. So we have a series of modules for this program of works. We're starting today with an introduction to data collection, and Mittal Jajeda will take us through that. But then we will move through over the next few months into areas such as signal detection and signal management, benefit risk assessment, safety communications, and also looking at the role of independent expert advice through the committees. So today is session 1 of module 1, where we have an introduction to pharmacovigilance, an overview of spontaneous reporting systems, and how countries can promote with healthcare professionals, immunization programs, and members of the public to engage with those reporting systems, so that the data that's received is of the highest quality and in the volume that's needed to identify safety issues. And then there'll be an opportunity at the end for questions and answers. In a week's time, we'll move forward into session 2 of module 1, which will look at some more around ADR data, and with a particular focus on vaccine-specific considerations. We'll also look at some of the tools and resources for data collection and management, and again, an opportunity for a Q&A. And then the final session in module 1 will be around good practice for coding both drug and reaction terms. So without further ado, I think that was a very short introduction to the program, but now I'll hand over to Mittal, who is our Special Projects Manager at the MHRA and has been working with the yellow card system and doing very much that work around encouraging reporting and driving up the quality and volume of reports that we receive in the UK, and sharing that experience with global partners. So thank you for your attention, and Mittal, I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick, for the kind introduction. I hope everybody can hear me. So hello, it's my privilege to speak to you all today, albeit virtually. As Mick said, we would love to do this kind of face-to-face and interactively. My name is Mittal Jadeja and I'm Module 1 lead on data collection with my colleague, Dr. Jo Lin. We could probably speak for a week on this topic. So today it will be a whistle-stop tour on the world of pharmacovigilance. You will get the slides of this from the two presentations, so please excuse me if I do go a little bit quickly in some places. Please do use the question and answer box in the chat and we'll respond to those. But today's talks, as Mick said, should really set the scene for some more in-depth topics that are about to come in the training modules at hand. So today you should be able to get a high-level understanding of pharmacovigilance, be able to explain what it is, why it's necessary, and to also understand that it is a global system. So medicines are taken by hundreds of millions of people across the world very effectively and safely, and have brought enormous benefits to public health and humanity. Unfortunately, for the most, it's impossible to predict who will suffer harm from a medicine. And no medicine is 100% safe for all people in all places and at all times. The word pharmacovigilance literally comes from the Greek and the Latin, meaning to watch over drugs. And to minimize harm or potential harm, national medicines regulators continue to assess all the safety profiles of medicines and vaccines after they've been licensed. And the reason for this is so that they can ensure that the overall balance of benefits and risks is positive for all products on the market. And this process is known as pharmacovigilance. And often it involves, as a cornerstone of the system, collection of suspected adverse drug reactions through national reporting systems. And this information is used alongside other important safety data. This data helps us to detect new clinical information and effects, which medicines regulators assess, understand, and if necessary, take appropriate regulatory action to minimize risks and promote safer use of medicines. All this activity ultimately leads to protecting public health. Pharmacovigilance is a global shared responsibility involving the entire health system, including all healthcare professionals, patients, public, pharmaceutical industry, the media, and of course, all of those people that I mentioned and their respective bodies and regulators. So Waller and Evans, having a little bit of trouble with the slideshow there. So Waller and Evans outlined a model for excellence through pharmacovigilance. And three processes are actually underpinned by scientific development, outcomes, measures, and audit. For this work, one needs to have the best quality of evidence, robust scientific decision-making, and protection tools. But to further accomplish this vision, I think pharmacovigilance actually should be supplemented by operating in an integrated environment, be fully comprehensive, and continuously improving. Pharmacovigilance should be focused on finding the harm and extending the knowledge of safety and benefits. It should encompass proactive planning and extending benefit risk knowledge of a product post-licensing. It should have clear milestones and move to more reliable information for patients, a system where there is transparency also, and an interface for that decision-making supplemented by useful feedback for reporters. And of course, clear, concise communication is absolutely paramount. So all medicines have the potential to cause adverse drug reactions. These are often as side effects to most people, and this is estimated around 1 in 20 hospital admissions result from adverse drug reactions, and a minority can actually lead to fatal complications. Healthcare professionals can minimize the impact of harm, but only if they know more about adverse drug reactions and if they're associated with the medicine they're prescribing, administering, or dispensing. Patients also should be well informed and have choice about the medicines and side effects about medicines or vaccines that they are given, or even if there is a potential risk. So reporting suspicions that there is a reaction happening acts as early warning systems to help medicines regulators monitor new information, which is called signals. And so reporting systems are really pivotal to drug safety monitoring. The outcomes of pharmacovigilance here are reinforced by robust scientific decision-making and assessment of this data to keep healthcare professionals up to date with, and help them minimize risks and maximize benefits for patients. And sometimes this happens with the help of a regional center. The links are provided to some of the countries there for the national reporting systems on this slide. But reporting makes a difference to patient safety worldwide. And you'll see here some of the satellite activities that are happening in pharmacovigilance medicines regulators and centers. And you'll hear more about these as the kind of talks go on. So the birth of pharmacovigilance was defined through thalidomide, which was originally marketed, as a sedative or tranquilizer, but was soon used for treating a wide range of conditions such as morning sickness, colds, flu, and nausea. And unfortunately, I'm sorry for the disturbing pictures here, but it resulted in congenital abnormalities for children that the mothers were taking this for morning sickness. And it was marketed as safe and free from side effects. The children developed phocomelia, which was like a seal-like limbs disorder. And this literally was the establishment of the need for monitoring safety. But of course, as time has moved on, we've learned from the past. Thalidomide restricts blood vessels and growth. And while that was devastating for the fetuses and those children, it was now indicated to treat multiple myeloma, and can only be used in certain indications over 65 with a pregnancy prevention plan, restricted populations, and a room full of packaging and educational materials, and can only be prescribed by certain prescribers. And that was a massive step forward for optimizing the benefits of a product, but we're not really there yet. Thalidomide is used to treat leprosy in some countries like Brazil and India, but there are still birth defects where there is low literacy levels as well, even though there are packaging pictures to remind people about the effectiveness of and the horrors of thalidomide. So it would be useful just to go through very highly before a medicine is licensed and given a marketing authorization. It is tested rigorously to identify any safety issues. And often this involves animal studies and then small human volunteer studies in phase 1, which then grow in size to a few hundred patients in phase 2, and then typically involving a few thousand patients in phase 3. Studies inform the product information, which includes a summary of medicinal product characteristics and the patient information leaflet, as well as the labeling and packaging. And evidence of the safety of the product informs that in terms of how it should be used in the marketing of that product. And so it's important then that pharmacovigilance overlaps into certain areas like that. And of course, with the COVID vaccine, this has actually been sped up. Usually the system will take up to 13 to 15 years to get to that process of marketing. And there has been rolling regulatory review depending on the different phases, and that evidence has been looked at and approved for safety, efficacy, effectiveness and quality, all to international standards. So in terms of mapping the safety for pharmacovigilance, clinical trials are actually the gold standard, but actually they have important limitations. We know very little about the safety once a product is licensed because of the small populations, relatively small size, limited duration, and doesn't really represent the real world settings in which medicines are given and used. Of course, there are medicines are not tested in children and elderly people. They're usually young, healthy males. And so important to monitor the frequency of reactions that happen, interactions, concomitant medications, and also long and rare reactions that might occur. So the need for pharmacovigilance is obvious in terms of watching over medicines, but it also enables us to act as a early warning system, as I said, identify new unrecognized adverse drug reactions, and also gain information about how adverse drug reactions affect clinical practice. But it also detects other safety issues so that regulators can take action and promote the safer use of medicines to protect patients. Pharmacovigilance not only involves the capture of adverse drug reactions, but also looks at all other evidence available, whether it's published or not published, and that includes studies, epidemiological data, looking at active surveillance, so tapping into electronic healthcare records and other studies and other unpublished data. There is sharing of information globally between regulators to look at that data as well, and often they all discuss signals. Reporting is actually an uncontrolled and biased set of anecdotes, if you think about it. And I'll go on to explain why that is in the next talk, but it is actually the most effective and sometimes only way to detect some of these long-term reactions quickly. It is the most sensitive early warning system, and many withdrawals of products for safety issues are based on spontaneous reporting. It is a global system. There are 171 members in the International Drug Monitoring Program for the WHO, and that is a growing piece of work there, which was founded in 1968 with 10 founder members, including the UK. Right, so you'll have to bear with me here. I just wanted to explain the global reporting of adverse drug reactions, which are called ICSRs in the industry, individual case safety reports. So you can make a report called direct reporting from any healthcare professional or patients of the public. And these are reported to national systems, such as the MHRA's Yellow Card scheme. But every country in that international drug monitoring system has one, and often is supported by regional centers. And there is access to that data in terms of what is reported. But ultimately, this ends up in a global system called Vigibase, and that is monitored and looked after by the Uppsala Monitoring Center, which is operated on behalf of the WHO and a collaborating center there. And any report that is sent through in terms of suspected adverse drug reactions can be looked at, and there is access to that data, and I'll show you in the next slide what that looks like. However, there is indirect reporting. There are legal obligations on industry to report those reactions to their products to national regulators. But also healthcare professionals and members of the public can obviously contact the companies themselves. It is advisable to report directly to national reporting systems due to the quickness of that. And that reporting is fed into vigilance if you're in Europe, but ultimately all roads lead to Vigibase, and there is access to that data as well. And what would be great is to see another box there, in future to look at Afrovigilance. So that reporting is then looked at as a continent. So Vigi Access is a way in which one can look at what is being reported and see the different reactions. You can see I've just picked up paracetamol and Moscarix, and you can see the geographical distribution there also in terms of usage. But there are important caveats to interpreting such data at face value, because we're looking at suspicions of data. And there are about 22 million reports in Vigibase at the moment, and this just gives you an idea of where those reports are coming from. And of course, Africa is nowhere to be seen there, and with the population of the 16% of the world's population, I very much hope they will follow in China's footsteps there, which very quickly over the last couple of years are now filling the database with adverse drug reaction reports. So there is a strong look towards Africa. So in terms of pharmacovigilance, there are some key steps. There's the data collection. There's looking for signals using technical statistical methods that looked at observed versus expected to see any background rates, and is it a true adverse drug reaction. And they'll be looking at the impact of that, the nature of the reaction, the strength, the public health impact, while they're doing the risk assessment, and they prioritize that. Then there is the risk-benefit process, and expert advice can be sought. And of course, you need to act, but timely, to protect patients through regulatory or other means. And of course, communication is key to that process. And prior to taking regulatory action, there is a lot of comms as necessary with other regulators. For example, the MHRA has memorandums of understanding with many countries, the FDA, China, India, etc. And there is data sharing of signals, access to Vigibase, access to other groups such as the IPMS, which shares data between a number of regulators there in terms of what signals are coming up, and to share in that learning. And of course, there are ICMRA groups, which is the International Coalition of Medicines Regulators, in which there is a pharmacovigilance subgroup, and I'll mention more about that later, but there are about 30 regulators within that. As Mick said, there is a strong GVP, so it's good pharmacovigilance practice, that actually supports this decision making, and this will be picked up later in talks, and these will definitely be of use to people in terms of looking at some of the decision-making models, including detail on how pharmacovigilance systems operate, and risk benefits, and risk management, for example. But absolutely, there must be special consideration for vaccine pharmacovigilance due to the nature of biologicals, properties of vaccines, and how it's given, and specific considerations for risk benefits. Often it's very much reliant upon looking at the observed as is expected, and real-time events, including the data from epidemiological studies that often needs to happen simultaneously. There needs to be a thorough understanding of the immunization process and the programs, and that risk management plan should be dynamic in terms of that, and proactive and tailored, as well as to be able to anticipate any previous or future issues. Communications obviously is very key. Rumours and vaccine hesitancy can actually derail and have a damaging role, for example, with MMR and autism, and the false claims that have been debunked since. And of course, it involves lots of stakeholders in the market, especially when you're talking about mass vaccinations such as COVID, etc. In terms of regulatory action, there is an armory of things that regulators can do, and that could be waiting for further evidence, or strengthening the product information to add warnings about how a medicine should be used or taken. You can change how a medicine is given in terms of access from prescription to pharmacy-only medicines or over-the-counter. Add labels and warnings onto packaging. Restrict pack sizes in terms of risk minimization measures to protect public health. And very rarely, if the benefits are outweighed by the risks of taking a product, that can be removed. But also there are safety reviews that can be taken forward through companies, and to confirm the safety or to check. And there are a number of communication tools, for example, here we've got our drug safety update, which is a monthly bulletin to advise healthcare professionals on emerging advice. And of course, there are alerting systems such as the WHO alert, or national alerting systems such as the central alerting system that goes to the healthcare system and is disseminated throughout. I've mentioned updating product information, but also writing to healthcare professionals through Dear Doctor letters. Social media can be a target, of course, press releases and the websites as well. The WHO also produce a newsletter which shows a roundup of all the international safety issues, which is very interesting. And you'll see here, for example, some of the countries involved in the signal on page 11. There, it looks at global data in that concept. So when looking at the landscape, there are some common problems that have emerged, that have been identified, and such as low incidence ratings for reporting not being mandatory, geographical access, technology for reporting also, and limited training. And these are the things that probably need to be addressed through a strategy to increase and improve awareness in that way. So in conclusion, the ongoing surveillance is absolutely necessary. ADRs are still received from established products, even though the efficacy is proven. Pharmacovigilance systems make this possible and are a vital tool for protecting public health, not only locally, but nationally, and they feed into global systems. It's fully reliant upon the data, so that needs to be high quality for signal detection, and reporting is used alongside all other safety data and is key to monitoring the safe use of medicines. So reporting can lead to global change. And so your input is fundamental of how to improve patient safety. So I'd like you to think, how can you make a difference to that global system? Thank you. Just opening this up now for questions. I think there are a few. So there's one question around the definition.
So
Mick has answered.
yeah, that was an interesting question around AEFIs from Taiwo. As I said in the response, AEFIs are certainly part of the pharmacovigilance system, as they have the potential to cause harms. They need to be part of any surveillance system. However, in different countries, these can operate differently. For example, in the UK, MHRA takes direct responsibility for the reporting of any suspected adverse events. With vaccines, they come to us as part of our normal yellow card scheme. We don't really tend to operate or use AEFI forms in the UK, but we know very much in many other countries, AEFIs are very much a prominent feature of the vaccine surveillance programs. Where those AEFI forms go to differs country to country. Often they might go directly to the immunization program, where they're analyzed, causality assessments are undertaken. But our recommendation is always that the regulator is part of that process, because it's the regulator who can act upon the safety issues that will emerge, and can change the product labeling, the advice. So it's always our recommendation that surveillance is very much as rigorous as it should be for any other medicine or vaccine on the market, but that the regulator is very much part of that process.
Absolutely.
There was another question that I saw around what we're seeing in the COVID vaccines so far. It's very much early days. The UK started to roll out the COVID vaccines about a month ago now, and we have seen a huge number of reports coming through. This is not to say that it's dangerous and reporting's, you know, kind of off the scale compared to medicines, but it's the promotion. And I think, Mittal, you're going to come on to some promotion stuff in a minute, but as you raise awareness of your reporting systems, you generate more reports. And as part of the vaccine rollout in the UK, we've very much made people aware that they should report any adverse events to us. So we've seen a lot of reports coming through, nothing to suggest any major safety concerns. We did identify some issues of anaphylaxis very early on, and we're able to give some advice around that, which now includes a 15-minute monitoring period post-vaccination. So the person vaccinated will receive their jab and will then have to sort of stay at the vaccination centre for 15 minutes observation period, just to make sure that there are no complications. So as I said, it's early days. The reports are coming in thick and fast, but mostly they're around the kind of expected events that we anticipated, such as, you know, injection site reactions, rash, fever, headache, etc.
And of course, those will be updated in the product information leaflet that is given to those vaccinees. You will get a copy of the presentation, and then that will be sent later. So hopefully that will help. Also, the reporting channels for vaccines, that will depend nationally. For example, the MHRA has a special COVID reporting website, and I'll talk more about that later. Okay.
Just there are a couple more reports. Will you get a copy of the presentation? Yes, I think these are being made available. This session's also being recorded for access to colleagues who haven't been able to make it. So very much so, you will have a copy of the slides and the recording of this session. And we've got from Galaxy, thank you for organising the programme. Nowadays, the world is suffering a lot from ADR, especially in Africa, which shares 16% of the world population. How leaders and scientists are considering issues regarding reporting and due attention to the programme. So this is very much part of with the Africa focus, the 3S programme, and we're very the AUDA is very keen in its objective to strengthen the pharmacovigilance system for the whole of the African Union by establishing stronger reporting systems and systems for analysing those reports. So the comment is well made and understood, and very much part of the programme. Is there any technology to identify the originality of medications? Some parts of Africa, sometimes ADR could be due to counterfeits. Yeah, this is a huge problem. There are initiatives around falsified medicines using barcodes, etc. But we also very much encourage that the reporting of suspected counterfeit medicines are part of the pharmacovigilance system. It's not always the case, but you can pick up through product quality issues that may be reported, these falsified medicines issues. So our advice is always, if you are concerned that a medicine is a counterfeit, then report it to the medicines regulator. And then there's another question there around Vigibase being accessible by anybody. Yes, it is, in the sense that you can view the number of reports for each product. It's called Vigi Access. You've asked for the URL. We'll be able to look that up, and we'll find a way to share that URL with colleagues on the webinar. So I think I missed one. How transparent are the pharmacovigilance reports on COVID-19 vaccines? How is this affecting improvements for the vaccine? So we haven't as yet, but the UK will be publishing hopefully very shortly. We've got to get through some framing of that data to make sure that it's as well presented as possible. But we will be making our data available on the Yellow Card website. We know that US FDA, Health Canada, and the European Medicines Agency are already publishing the ADR data that they've received for the COVID vaccines. So if you go onto their websites, hopefully you'll be able to find their published data. And from Hanifat Hamzat, have there been ADRs resulting from COVID-19 vaccines? I think I've already mentioned that in the UK, we're experiencing a large uptake in reporting of yellow cards on the COVID-19 vaccines. Just to put this into context, UK has always been in the top 10 of countries in terms of reporting rates. So we get around 45,000 reports a year, typically in the UK over the past few years. If yesterday was to be repeated over the course of the year, we'll receive 500,000 reports this year. That's how many reports on COVID-19 vaccines we received yesterday, when we typically receive 45,000. So we don't expect that to continue at that rate. This is very much in focus, but the reporting is strong. There are lots of reports coming in, but as I said, there are no major safety issues have been identified as yet. We're looking at these reports as they come in. We're having signal meetings, and we said earlier, future sessions will cover signal detection activities. We're having signal meetings every day, looking at the data. So rest assured that any information, any safety issues that arise will be identified very quickly and will be shared globally with our partners. Perhaps Mittal, you should carry on, and we'll pick up any other questions at the end.
Thanks, Mick. Conscious of the time also, I've answered the access for VigiAccess, and I think so has Alicia at the same time, which is there, so you should have that in the Q&As. So the next talk is around an overview of spontaneous ADR systems and promotion. And I should provide you an overview of those systems in terms of their strengths and limitations, why it's important to report, and elaborate on some of the things that I've mentioned specific to ADR reporting, what actual ADR is and when and what to report, and also understand the importance of raising awareness, including some promotional aspects of campaign work. So reporting, suspected is a key word there, side effects, helps make medicine safer in a nutshell, prevents future harm, improves information that's given to healthcare professionals and patients through effective regulation, and ultimately protects public health. So it's only right to see what is an ADR, and it's literally a response to a medicinal product which is noxious and unintended. I've provided the WHO definition there, and followed by the European slightly more detailed definition, and the links to that can be found in the good pharmacovigilance practices in Annex 1, which also provides a lots of different terminologies and their meanings, which is quite a useful document. But it also includes any harm to a medicinal product that is inside or outside its marketing authorization from which it is being authorized for. So that includes things where there's harm from off-label use, overdose, misuse, abuse, and also from medication errors where harm occurs. But for a patient, it's literally anything that I suffer harm from, that I suspect, and that should be reported to national reporting system. So it's a very easy message to take out. And it's only right, oh, bit of a technical issue there. Getting a bit trigger happy. There are many different types of adverse drug reactions within that in terms of how you classify that. So let's look at some of these maybe in turn very quickly. Realize it's a busy slide. Some are dose related, so type A's, we're called augmented reactions. For example, warfarin and GI bleeding. These are kind of common, predictable. Some are type Bs that are not dose related and not predictable based on pharmacology, hypersensitivity reactions or renal damage from ACE inhibitors. Reactions that continue for a long or lasting time, such as olanzapine associated with diabetes, and which is a less obvious dose relationship. And then delayed reactions, and also end of life, kind of end of use reactions, such as withdrawal reactions from benzodiazepines. Another classification that's used is DOTS there, where it actually helps diagnosis and prevent ADRs in clinical practice. And also when you try to look at the susceptible and risk groups of suffering an adverse drug reaction, it's the young, the elderly, often women. Age has a factor to that. Previous medical history, taking multiple products, underlying diseases, allergies even, and especially, it's important to report adverse drug reactions in children and the young, because many drugs are not actually tested in children, not licensed for use in children, so either used off-label or through the clinical expertise that has been gained over the years. And medicines affect the way a child grows and develops. And of course, delayed reactions may not be there. There may not be suitable formulations for children to allow precise dosing, excipients that may affect children. And the nature, of course, of illnesses for ADRs may be different between adults and children. So how do you identify an adverse drug reaction? Well, reactions that soon start after a drug, or you increase the dose, or after a drug is stopped, or reappearing after a drug is restarted. So that's, positive and negative re-challenges usually are good flags to see if an ADR is happening and to promote reporting. Also, specific diseases actually predispose one to ADRs. For example, HIV patients that are positive, is it increased frequency of idiosyncratic reactions, also, for example, with cotrimoxazole. There are also changes in routine tests may suggest an adverse drug reaction, or changes in pre-existing conditions. But if in doubt, always report is the key message. And of course, why report? Apart from the increased morbidity, mortality, and harm to patients, adverse drug reactions have important consequences in terms of major impact to patients and in public health. WHO considers them to be among the leading causes of death in many countries. About 60% are preventable. They account for 5% of hospital admissions and the fifth most common cause of death. And there have been some studies in the UK that have looked at the estimates of hospital admissions being about 6.5%, as well as those people in hospital suffering serious adverse reactions. And 40% of patients in the community also experience adverse drug reactions. But there is a massive level of underreporting. And of course, that has a financial strain on the health system as well. I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of setting up a spontaneous reporting system. Obviously, it's there to identify new reactions that are unrecognized. And so because it's reliant upon suspicions, the sensitivity can be really high, and human intervention to spotting that is one of the issues there. It's quite rapid in terms of applying it nationally, and very cheap to operate relatively. And it can be integrated into the system if done well, and the technology allows it. But on the other hand, it doesn't provide a true estimate of the number of cases that are there or the number of patients that are exposed. So, estimated risk associated with that, not a true number. Again, as I said, it relies on an adverse drug reaction actually being reported, and only 10% of reactions are reported, and even less for serious reports there. Reporting is also stimulated by promotion. So, for example, if there was a scare or a new product or a new vaccine out on the market, etc., you would expect reporting to increase, as Mick mentioned. Reports don't imply that they're causal because we're asking for suspicions. And of course, that opens it up to how that information is then misused or misinterpreted. As I mentioned, some may dismiss it in terms of showing a little evidence, and there is also a call for exploring more real-time vigilance data and using technology for doing that. However, when you look at some of the data in terms of withdrawals, spontaneous reporting actually remains one of the main reasons there as to why, and then the evidence that was there in terms of signals for removing something from a market compared to other, for example, animal studies or case control studies or cohorts. Of course, clinical trials are the gold standards, but this we're talking about post-marketing adverse drug reaction reports. So back in 1961, in the thalidomide tragedies, the Australian obstetrician raised warnings about his suspicions in the Lancet, and these literally are true today, even though his request was ignored and dismissed by the company. And there are 4 things that he wrote about in there that actually form the basis of what a report should include. And of course, that's a reaction. It's the patient identifier, so something about the patient, the drug itself, what's causing it, and of course, the reporter who's reporting. But he also looked at the narrative, so explaining that, and then there are studies out there showing the importance of narrative in terms of decision-making. And he also referred to some of the epidemiology and the signals, looking at observed versus expected rates as well. So all in all, very true today in terms of what we're looking at. But of course, it's really important to provide as much information as possible when reporting an adverse drug reaction, and that includes things like test results, medical history, diagnosis, and any other missing information. So what should you be reporting? Well, in the UK, we have some formal reporting requirements for healthcare professionals, and here it is. And these are normally supported by the professional bodies. And we're asking for suspected adverse drug reactions, of course, and we list what they can be reported for: any medicine, any vaccination, whether self-medicated or prescribed, but also herbal medicines and traditional remedies, such as homeopathics, etc. We ask for serious reports or harm. And the serious reports there are the international standards there, SIOM's criteria for serious, fatal, life-threatening, congenital abnormalities, disability, or resulting in hospitalization. And we look for these kind of reports and flag those in our systems, as well as any terms of reactions that are medically significant. And of course, medication error, if there is any harm produced from the product there. We also ask for those products that are displaying a black triangle. Excuse me. And these are usually given to a product that is new, such as a vaccine, or that has been given conditional approval for licensing. It doesn't mean that product is unsafe. It just means that we're additionally monitoring that as it's just been released onto the market, and usually is applied there for 5 years. And there are various reporting methods in different countries, from online integration into clinical systems, which has actually improved reporting and over time. For example, all general practitioners can report about 98% of those GP practices can report in the UK directly from their clinical systems to the agency electronically. And of course, mobile apps for as well, SMS reporting in some countries, or even paper reports that are specific for healthcare professionals in their national formularies, or for patients with specific language differences to explain what adverse drug reactions is or suspected side effects of the language used. And of course, the usual kind of telephone reporting, which requires resource. So, you know, we would opt for encouraging electronic reporting, especially when we're working remotely in times like this. It's also important to include brand and batch numbers, especially for biological medicines, vaccines, etc. And we say it's good practice to include the information in patient notes and medical notes. And of course, we look for suspicions and signals that are being generated from that. Here's an example of some of the e-reporting forms in each of these countries, and very, very easy to find on the website, and the links are there to report suspected adverse drug reactions or reactions to vaccines as well. Many countries have worked with the MHRA and WHO as well, and UMC Centre to adopt the Medicines Safety Act, which has, as you can see, a number of countries there, including Nigeria, who have announced that in the last Med Safety Week. But it offers a real easy and quick customization and management of adverse drug reactions, easy for, you know, putting translation in the language according to national context. There also has news feeds about emerging issues, and is also connected to Vigibase, and you can see the access there. So I do encourage those people on the call, if you haven't downloaded it, download it now, and don't delay and report suspected adverse drug reactions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens once a regulator gets these reports, and from whatever means it might be, mobile app, etc., they go onto our system. And if they're from paper, they're scanned. If not, they go onto the database. There is an element of QA in terms of making sure that they are as robust and the quality is excellent. They are sometimes followed up, and once they're committed to our database, we can then interrogate that and look for different trends. Once that's done, we would assess that report and do signal detection. And we're looking here at observed versus expected data, changes in frequency, and often what we do is we use statistical methods, and many other countries do so. We're looking at observed versus expected, and the statistical software to look at odds ratios, relative risk, and for example, the MHRA looks also at the alert terms for certain reactions, as I said, changes in frequency, and even looks at you know, the observed versus the expected in a Gamma-Poisson shrinker method, all quite technical, but there will be more talks on signal detection to discuss that further. And of course, those signals, if they are detected, are then looked at, evaluated and prioritized for public health benefit and impact. And there is also an element of being able to see the understanding with experts and to ensure that we are taking the right decisions for regulatory action, followed by communication, as I kind of alerted to previously. So again, it's the input, this gets processed, we are transparent with the data, we assess and evaluate it and look for signals, we do risk benefit, and then that kind of flows into the outcomes to break it down into something a little bit more digestible. So we don't look for causality immediately. We don't ask for people to say causality, that this report that they're reporting is actually linked, because it's about signals. And in terms of the things that and the factors that we would look at is the nature of the reaction, the biological plausibility linked to that, other similar effects for medicine, the timing from the reaction from starting the medicine to the drug, any interactions that are looking at that in terms of the biological plausibility there, the impact to public health, and also the strength of cases, and all other safety information that is looked at in terms of the benefit risk there. And many countries, as I said, have established large specialized databases to do this, but there are also models for smaller data sets there, and there are 10 steps to note in terms of the UMC's document there that can be easily found online, and there's a link in the presentation also in the notes. But the signal assessments can be also accessed via Vigiliers, which provide information about adverse drug reaction, so drug event combinations also. So what about vaccines? I know there have been some comments there around events after immunization, adverse events following immunization. And, you know, you're going to get injection process related adverse events like vasovagal episodes before, during and after giving a vaccine, bleeding from piercing, etc. And there are expected events that happen. Expect more of those reactions to be reported with attention from media from vaccines, like with all medicines, but more often with vaccines because of the attention. And traditionally, the vaccines have been introduced after quite a number of years or large post-marketing experience for effectiveness. And that is shifting now to new vaccines really being used directly, for example, like the Ebola vaccine, etc. So that often is leading to a shift in post-marketing use to regulatory agencies within lower middle and income countries. So therefore, it certainly reinforms the importance of real-time pharmacovigilance, capacity building, information sharing, and learning and development. You know, so the foot is on the other shoe now, and where we can be learning together for pharmacovigilance. So in terms of vaccine pharmacovigilance, there are special considerations, as I mentioned, not only because of the biological nature and variability of vaccine. No vaccine is the same. There are no generic vaccines, for example. The antigens and recipients all play a big part in terms of what that will look like. They're all often given to large populations, so there's no comparable groups. Very rare and serious reports are going to be reported, so the importance of observed versus expected is even more important to look at. And of course, the vaccination scares of impact and resurgence of a disease need to be thought about. You need to look at previous issues and anticipate what those might be. You need to be dynamic in your approach for immunization programs and changes in terms of program-related events, and tailor your risk management strategy around that. And that can be even temporal or geographic. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on this because I don't want to steal Dr. Jolynn's thunder for the next series of talks, but you know, she will talk about special considerations for this. But it's important, for example, for risk management in terms of a pandemic, to optimize the tools that you have at your disposal, such as ADR reporting, to enhance the platform, make it automated to deal with a large number of cases using technology, and of course, look at that as a real-time approach. So daily signal detection, looking for potential issues. Of course, you need to look into the clinical data in terms of actively surveillance of that to see what is naturally happening, you know, stratify against age and risk groups, look at that over time, you know, for every 100K doses, how many cases would occur by chance? Is it, you're looking at the observed versus expected, and compare different cohorts and clusters. And of course, about when you're looking at enhanced surveillance passively, you would want to look at real-time exposure. You need to know how many doses are being given, stratified by age, look at also the confidence of reporting for odds ratios, and of course using statistical methods and things like multiple testing for real-time monitoring, maximize sequential probability ratio tests, but there are other models that look at observed versus expected analysis, at least for a couple of years. And there are thresholds there and sensitivity analysis that you need to take into account. And of course, as I mentioned, communication is key. You need to be proactive, you need to be transparent with the data, you need to assist how that is interpreted and give a balanced representation of the safety profile of a product. Otherwise, it's very quickly to be misinterpreted, and that data can be misused. Here's an example of the coronavirus yellow card site, for example. So do have a look at that, which was being enhanced based on the yellow card reporting system, based on the previous swine flu pandemic experience that we've had, and hopefully to be a more tailored and specific reporting system for medicines, but also medical devices, for example, ventilators, etc. That was there. And so what about medication errors? Those are adverse drug reactions. It's important, therefore, for people to report medication errors where there is harm. And not only for medicines regulators to look at that, because there are other preventable adverse drug reactions, preventable medication errors where no harm occurs. It's important for regulators to work within their healthcare system with various bodies and clinical authorities, and to do signal detection and analyze these together to flag preventable errors for learning that is actionable. And in the UK, we have developed a system with our counterparts in the healthcare system, NHS England and Improvement, and established a network which consists of about 500 medication safety officers looking at improving reporting, preventing errors, local and national education about medication errors, but also adverse drug reactions as a totality. It looks at the system improvements as well, in order to protect public health, and also responds to the WHO medication error challenge. So of course there are program related errors, such as look-alike and sound-alike errors that are bound to happen. And so how can we, play our part in that as a regulator? We've got two products here that are being given, look very, very similar. One being given to pregnant women for whooping cough and immunization, the other being given for tetanus, diphtheria and polio. And so by reports of this through the yellow card scheme, etc., we're able to change the product packaging and information to say, look, one is a preschool booster, and they're changing the colors so that people can very clearly identify and not make those medication and program related errors. The role of a healthcare professional is vital in terms of who can actually report. They are the best people to discuss with patients for what a medicine is, why you've been giving it, why you're being prescribed it, but also the risks associated and potential risks. They are best placed to talk during their consultation or when they're administering medicines. Talk about, specific inquiries and deal with them in terms of what pains and allergies, etc. they might have, and general questioning about the treatment. But it also means that they need to be vigilant in identifying and also reporting those reactions. But patients, what about patients? Well, we've been having the yellow card scheme in terms of the MHRA has been accepting patient reports for a number of years, starting in 2005 and launched formally in 2008. And so we've been evaluating very quickly. We evaluated that data to see, what is the value of patient reporting compared to healthcare professional, because often that was dismissed at that time. There was an old report here by Avery et al., and that looked at the differences in terms of what was reported. Patients are reporting different patterns of drugs and reactions, and there have been many studies now that have reaffirmed some of that information. And when you look at the data and you combine the data set for healthcare professionals and patients, you do get more signals that come out of that. it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. And so some of the recommendations are around raising awareness and providing more guidance, etc. Things that we were already doing in terms of a yellow card strategy to improve reporting numbers, etc., which I'll talk about in a minute. And of course, now the shift from GPs and healthcare professionals being reporting the most, patients, carers, and parents are the largest single reporting group at the moment, and this continues to evolve for various reasons, promotion, and also even simple things of putting things in trusted sources, as well as information leaflets and having details to report under the side effects sections to the agency or to reporting national reporting systems is actually really useful. Talked about patient reporting. So here are some promotional materials. Patients obviously reporting quicker because they are experiencing reactions themselves. And so here are some credit card information leaflets that you can kind of pop into a bag for when you've been given your medicine by a pharmacist, or even at conferences and so forth when you speak to patients. The patient form is on the left-hand side. As I said, it's a specific form that has been distributed, and we continue to distribute that through, for example, our regional centres that help us with education and promotion. But it's also important to have that information in, or at least about reporting at the very basic, in different languages. So you'll see in the top right-hand side, there are different information there for various languages. And of course, being able to promote the app, talk about watch lists, about medicines they have, and also provide them with news about their medicines that they can take, and telling them that it's free to download. And there are various other promotional stuff like stickers as well, which help. It's important to show the value of why reporting is important. And of course, a picture tells 1,000 words. And although distressing, we do use some of these things to get the point across in terms of the types of reactions that are reported that weren't known about before being reported. So, for example, here is a risk of a chemical burn from a premature infant when chlorhexidine was used just to disinfect where the baby was getting changed. And even things like events like that are reported, and we're able to take action on. But of course, there's the traditional adverse drug reactions that we do receive and take action on, and there's a whole contribution from yellow cards to side effects that you can see on our website, which we have tried to turn into more usable things that can promote the scheme and report. So in terms of also looking at outcomes of reporting, many reports can be prevented by making sure that the drug is taken correctly. And of course, healthcare professionals need to stay up to date with that relevant advice, etc. And so that plays a critical understanding in the benefits and risks of medicines on the market. Many of the reports we receive have led to changes in advice. And in Europe, 1/3 of those reports led to some kind of regulatory action. But underreporting remains around 90% for various reasons. So the importance to communicate with stakeholders across all the different elements is really important. And of course, in order to have a continuous improvement system, you must measure impact, outcomes to continuous improve. And so we have I've worked with the joint action, strengthening collaborations of pharmacovigilance in Europe to produce a strategy based on the yellow card strategy in order to increase reports. And it's about making reports accessible, understanding the value through education, from modules to having things in trusted sources, and making people more likely to report through various indicators or networks or champions. And that should be supported by promotion communications, developing a brand rather than calling it the spontaneous adverse drug reaction reporting system, call it something that people will know about, like the yellow card. It's easier to say. And of course, social media plays an element about that, and I'll speak very quickly about that soon. But making reporting easy and accessible is really important. And we've seen marked increases as that in terms of making that available in clinical systems, useful to be in the app, report on the go from wherever you may be. And in some countries, obviously, that the internet is not as great and more available for mobile networks, etc. But continuously enhancing forms also helps. That is underpinned by collaborations, because you can't do it all yourself. You don't have the resource. So collaborating and partnership with healthcare professional bodies, patient organizations, really, really helps. Having a plan. Here are some things to consider around how to develop an effective campaign, from having a strategy, the budget, what the high level messages are. You can't tell people everything all the time, what those challenges might be, having an action plan, and of course measuring that, and what channels you will use in terms of how you will deliver those messages. That could be even on a phased approach through, immunization centers, for example, and then going to train them, etc. It could all be parcel of a good campaign. As I said, we've been working internationally. So I lead a project with Mick for increasing adverse event reporting through ICMRA. And there are about 30 regulators in ICMRA. And there is a specific pharmacovigilance subgroup that looks at big data, increasing reporting and vaccines. Do check this report out. It shows lots of different examples of people of regulators in terms of their strategy, benchmarking, where they are and how they're moving forward. For example, here it just shows a number of initiatives, from information from reporting on your website to e-learning modules and the various things that they do for promotion. I'll talk a bit about Med Safety Week. This is born out of the MHRA's Adverse Drug Reaction Awareness Week, where we encourage all healthcare professionals to report adverse drug reactions, and this happens annually. It was our 5th one last year, 2nd to 8th of November. And together with UMC, that develop animations, we provide a campaign guide, press release, social media, so that medicines regulators and their stakeholders can jump on this ready to use materials to promote adverse drug reactions. And here's an example of many, many different ready-to-use tools that you can see on the Yellow Card website, and also the UMC site, which we have tailored and produced through the Joint Action Scope campaign to increase awareness levels, as well as Med Safety Week. Do please check it out. If there is time, I will show you, for example, how we have turned the case study, for example, into a promotional aspect, and I hope you'll be able to hear it and see this. Alicia, I don't think the video is there. Or playing. It might be your sound is off. Anyway, that video is there. Please do check it out when you do get the slides. The preliminary, well, we've started the evaluation for this. We're very pleased to know that United Nations and the World Health Organization have also supported this, what is now a global campaign, which has reached 140 million people. It was the most successful to date, even though many people were in lockdown, and they were flexible in their approach in terms of using virtual training and other promotion work internationally. And I'll give you an example of some of those before we move to kind of the final concluding part. 76 countries took part this year, including countries on this call, medicines regulators. So our thanks to everybody that was involved. It is truly a global campaign now. And here's some example tweets, etc. For example, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control announced their app, MedSafety app, through MedSafety Week. It was a great opportunity to do so. United Nations, the World Health Organization, etc. Virtual talks in different languages, and even organizations called like the Vaccine Safety Network. But of course, it's important to engage beyond social media, but use social media as a tool then to inspire others. Here's some examples of some of the things that have been happening in the UK during the week through our champions and through our regional centres, from baking cakes and, you know, encouraging people, showing as champions to or advocates to reporting always helps in terms of clinical colleagues telling people about emerging effects and reporting. So in conclusion, adverse drug reaction is reporting is the cornerstone of pharmacovigilance activities. So many new safety issues have been identified from reporting, again, which weren't known prior to being reported. It does rely on the goodwill of healthcare professionals and patients to report, and they are both equally valuable. There are special considerations for vaccines, and you'll hear more about that as this series moves on. And they're essential tools in terms of improving patient safety, especially in vulnerable populations. Underreporting is a big problem. Awareness shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be part and parcel of any pharmacovigilance system and any operation that is taken forward. It's usually an indicator of good patient safety and a learning culture when there is good reporting, because only from the reporting can you learn and move forward and protect public health. So be proactive, should I say, and promote reporting with your patients and your stakeholders, and use those tools such as social media, etc., educational tools, as there are really powerful mediums to deliver some of that support. So I'll leave you with the final thought. How can you be the driver for that change and contribute to making a difference, not only nationally, but globally? Thank you, Mittal.
Well, thank you very much, Mittal. You've covered an enormous amount of ground. As you said, a whistle-stop tour of some of the activities that ourselves and international colleagues undertake in order to strengthen our reporting systems. There's been a number of questions that have come through the Q&A box. A number of them were talking about or asking about the types of ADRs that we've seen and safety issues that may have been identified on the COVID-19 vaccines that have been used in the UK. As I said earlier, we are getting a large number of reports, and we are assessing those on a minute-by-minute basis and having signal meetings on a daily basis. It's not for me today to go into any detail around what we have seen on those, but I'd encourage colleagues to keep an eye on their MHRA's website for any emerging safety issues that might be identified. But as I said earlier, so far so good. We're collecting data, we're analysing that data, and we'll identify rapidly any emerging safety issues that need to be acted upon. We also had questions around a question around social media and how what the MHRA is doing to combat anti-vax comments on social media. We are monitoring those, but we're seeing it more as a government response rather than an MHRA response. And there has been an increasing rebuttal. We have sort of regular ministerial and Prime Minister level briefings on the coronavirus situation in the country. And increasingly there are some rebuttals coming through in those comments. But the MHRA are kind of stepping back from those activities and leaving it at more of the political level. There was a question around haemovigilance and whether that's part of our pharmacovigilance system. And yes, it is at the MHRA. We do collect adverse incidents regarding blood and blood products. and act on those as part of our broader vigilance activities. And I know that differs country to country. One of the questions was around how have we achieved such a high reporting rate? Well, I think Mittal's covered it actually. It's a combination of awareness raising of the system and making available the tools for people to use to report. People will be aware of systems, but if the reporting isn't made easy for them, then they're not going to do it. So a combination of making it easy, encouraging people to do so. There was a question around if I'm vaccinated, do I still need to wear a mask? That will be a local political decision in country as to how the policymakers see the success or otherwise of the vaccination program, and country by country restrictions may be reduced, and the vaccine obviously will support those decisions, but that won't be a decision that the MHRA will take. It will be a cross-government policy decision. There was a question around how awareness is raised. I think that was before Mittal got deep into some of the tactics that are used, not just by MHRA, but by others as well. Those social media channels, publicity, using the media, and as I said, making it easy, are all part of how we raise awareness and encourage people to report. There was an interesting question from a colleague in Nigeria that said in Nigeria, a yellow card is the vaccination record. It shows who's been vaccinated rather than the report for making a report on an ADR. That's an interesting one. We also in the UK have yellow forms to say that to be a record of an individual's immunizations. So yeah, we can see where confusion arises. As Mittal said, we think it's important to brand your national reporting system. Ours is yellow card. It has been since 1963, but you know, for example, in Ghana it's called the blue cards, and in other countries that they have other names. But I think it is important to create a brand, because that helps to support that awareness raising activity. If people get a brand that they can resonate with. There was also a question around how we can reward reporting, and we've looked at this for many years, both in terms of how we can reward the individual, and it's a difficult one because you can't give monetary rewards. And I don't think you should give monetary rewards, because that could drive up false reporting just for the sort of carrot of getting some payment. We like to rely on the goodwill and the altruism of both patients and healthcare reporters. Healthcare reporters, it's a professional responsibility. It's in the codes of practice that they should report adverse drug reactions for pharmacists, doctors, nurses. And we rely on the educators, the people who deliver the curriculum for undergraduate, and then through postgraduate, once qualified, those professional standards to be adhered to. But it really is an altruistic action from anyone, but the goodwill is more important, I think, than the payment. People understand.
I think some countries offer CPD points as well for some yellow card reporting, and then or some types of spontaneous reporting, as well as, you know, certificates and also awards. In terms of the certificate, you know, we recognise the value of your contribution, etc.
There's also a number of countries mandate reporting to drive up their reporting rates. It's a legal requirement on many health professionals in many countries. We've looked at that. We think it is sometimes counterintuitive. So that's one that is an option when reporting rates are low. I'm conscious that we've gone over time and we haven't answered all of the questions. That was a kind of a machine gun response to the ones that I picked up in the chat box, but we are collecting the Q&As. We've got a record of the Q&As, and when we send out the video and the PowerPoints, we'll seek to address some of the unanswered questions. Colleagues have been making a record of the questions that have been asked. So those that have stayed on, thank you for attending. I hope you found it interesting. There are some questions, a poll for, I don't know, Mitchell, if you can move forward with the poll, or Alicia, if you want to jump in to explain how the poll works. But it would be really useful to get your contributions here, just so we can evaluate how we did, so that the next sessions can improve if there are some issues. But we'd really like your feedback. So if you can answer the questions that are in front of you, and I think you have to answer all of them before you can click the submit button, and we'd welcome your feedback.
Thank you very much, Mick and Mitchell. A fantastic webinar today. We still have 184 colleagues on the line. I know a few have been dropping off as the webinar has just reached the end time. So a big thank you to all attendees for joining today. As Mick said, if you could complete the poll in front of your screens, that would help us improve the further webinars that will be taking place. We've had lots of positive comments coming through the chat, so many thanks for sending those, as well as improvements for the other webinars, such as fitting in a short break if time permits, and sharing the PowerPoint in advance of the webinar. Thank you very much all for your participation today, and we look forward to welcoming you to the other AU Smart Safety Surveillance webinars. Thank you very much.
Everyone.